once again, and welcome to Entertainment Spectrum. I'm Erwin K. Roberts, your host, and we're coming to you from beautiful downtown Kansas City, Missouri, or almost Kansas City, Missouri. And our guest tonight is from, his business anyway, is from 10th and Minnesota in Kansas City, Kansas. Well, for all I know, he lives upstairs there. Bob Maes, the manager of the Granada Theater, is with us tonight, and we'll be discussing things past, present, and future at the Granada Theater. Now, first, for a little bit of the past, a week or so ago, my daughter, my wife, and I had a grand time at a theater organ concert. Now, for those of you who are ready to hit the dial right now, folks, no, we do not mean church-style music, anything but. Most people forget what a real theater organ can do in the way of music, sound effects, and so forth, and we had a master at the concert organ the other night. So, first of all, let's take a look at the Granada Theater lit up for a night at the theater. Well, the Granada Theater's at it again, folks. We're going to see some organ music, hear a recreation of a radio broadcast, and probably find out what's coming up with the movies at the Granada Theater. So, let's go in and take a look. Okay.
Good evening.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Look at that.
You just won the prize.
Yeah.
You were the 10th person in, right?
Here for anything?
And there you have the how to get in the Granada Theater in 3 easy lessons. Bob, is it any easier than that?
No, you can't get much easier than that, Erwin.
Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about Lee Erwin, who happens to spell his name the same way I do, that we saw in concert the other night.
Strange coincidence, but that's his last name. Lee is the master of the theater pipe organ. His musical career started back in 1928 as an organist to accompany the silent films down in Alabama. And from there, in 1933, he went on to start the Moon River radio broadcast on WLW in Cincinnati.
And we'll be seeing some more about that in a few minutes.
The Moon River Show, and he was with that up until 1944. And from there he went to New York, CBS, and was the musical director for the Arthur Godfrey Show for many, many years. So Lee has an extensive background there. Then I think it was about 1967, a group of enthusiasts took him out of retirement and had him recreate some of the scores for the silent films. And he's been doing that ever since.
And the stuff's getting more popular all the time. And we have a montage of some of the fine music that Lee Erwin played for us. So let's take a look at a master at work. Mr. Erwin played pop. He played a tune from the Phantom of the Opera that you'll hear in just a moment. And he also played some of the old stuff as well. So let's take a look. Lee Erwin at work.
Now there's another show in New York. It's an off-Broadway show called The Fantastics. film with Lon Chaney. As everybody in the country knows, the musical Phantom of the Opera has been one of the biggest hits in a good many years. So let me play for you one of the tunes from the show. It's a song called Think of Me, and it's one of the big solo arias, so to speak, for the girl who is the main character in the Phantom of the Opera. And at the very end, just sort of a coloratura cadenza that I'll try to play for you. It won't sound like she does, but at any rate, it's the same notes. So here is a tune called Think of Me from Phantom of the Opera. Now, of course, no program of this sort would be complete without at least a bit of George Gershwin. So I've selected a couple of things for Porgy and Bess and another thing which you certainly recognize.
There you have it. I was sitting in about the third row and really enjoying it. My daughter was getting a bit of an education watching that organ work, and my wife had never really heard much of any organ music except for traditional church music, so it was quite a difference for her as well. How long do you have to book Lee Erwin in advance, Bob?
Well, we run our schedule approximately a year in advance. So our concerts and silent film series now are already selected all the way through the end of next June of '89.
Well, I hope you manage to have Mr. Erwin back again, because he certainly knows how to get the best out of that thing.
It's a little bit of nostalgia, and it's quite a trip back in time to see the master at the console of the mighty theater organ.
Well, I really enjoyed the tour of the organ, complete with pictures to show the versatility of something that was created, to narrate silent films as opposed to play straight music or for church or what have you.
Well, the theater organ was built to do the silent films and early radio broadcasts, things like that. And what the people have seen here tonight on their screen is just a small part of the instrument. A brief description to give them an idea of the size. It took 2 semi-trucks to move the organ into Kansas City. The organ right now is approximately 80 feet wide, if you can visualize your house, by over 2 stories tall, and weighs approximately 20 tons.
That's even bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah, there's over 2,000 pipes in the instrument, as well as the tuned percussions and sound effects that are all controlled there at the console by the organist.
So and you play this thing yourself.
I do several silent films and intermission music between the shows, and it's a treat.
Well, it certainly is impressive. Now, we talked about silent films. The other thing that Lee Erwin did when he was in town was to play 2 showings of Rudolph Valentino's The Eagle, a silent film that I was only vaguely familiar with. And at that concert, they played us a little teaser, and our cameraman Vince, well, let's face it, he got a good portion of this little silent teaser for The Eagle with Valentino. And let's see a silent film accompanied as a silent film was meant to.
Thank you for coming. We hope you enjoy the show. One more big round of applause for Lee. Thank you.
And there's Lee Erwin taking a well-deserved bow at the end of that presentation. By the way, folks, for technical reasons, our video cam, handheld as it was, that's why the picture was jumping a little bit, made those flickers, because I watched that thing from the theater and the flicker was not there to the naked eye. That was an excellent print of a 60-some-year-old movie. So, and I understand the showings went very well the following days.
Oh, they sure did. The silent film has become an art form anymore, and not only is it being taught in colleges and universities around the country, but it's got a cult following now. People are really getting into this old stuff, and the thing that they have to remember is that the actors and actresses didn't have words to convey their emotions and their thoughts, and it all had to be done by facial expressions, body movements, and of course the organist had all this to take into consideration when he was putting his music to it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, my children have started to enjoy silent films, as I do, and a lot of kids apparently are getting into this stuff. Now, we have some interview footage that I got with Lee Erwin right after the concert finished. So let's take a look at what he has to say about himself and about concert organ music. Here we are at the mighty organ in the Granada Theater with Mr. Lee Erwin, who spells his name the same way I do. So there, all you IRWIN folks. And we had a great time tonight with your concert, and we hope you're back in town soon.
Well, come tomorrow night and see the whole thing.
Unfortunately, this tape isn't going to be on that soon.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, you, sir, have been playing the organ for, is it 50, 60 years now?
Yes, something.
That's an excellent old projector.
And tell us a little bit about playing for live radio.
Well,
I think freed up, it worked just fine.
it was, of course, it was live music. Back in the 30s, as a matter of fact, as I understand it, they weren't even allowed to play records for a long time. So nearly every radio station in the country had, a bunch of musicians to furnish music. I know WLW in Cincinnati had about 100 men on the music station.
Well, I know KMOX Radio in St. Louis kept their orchestra into the early 60s.
Yes.
Which was darn unusual then.
Right.
Now, you've written scores for a number of silent films. Can you give us a list of some of them that our audience might recognize?
Well, all of the Keaton films, but films.
Oh heavens, that's my favorite.
Right. Beginning with the General, Sherlock Jr., Seven Chances.
That wasn't your score that Arts and Entertainment broadcast with the General, was it?
I don't know. My score was broadcast, I know, on the BBC in London with the General.
Channel 30 now.
I don't know.
Well, Arts and Entertainment steals everything they can from the BBC, so it may have
It
been.
may have been, yeah. Okay.
What do you have to say to people that are not familiar with silent films and live radio to get them started?
Well, what I've discovered is, of course, most so-called teenagers, they say that they're not interested in silent films, but if you can get them in to see one, then they're hooked, so to speak, and they're certainly interested, because I did a whole series of films on one occasion. Not all the films, but a thing called The Silent Clowns, which was the films of Keaton, Langdon, Lloyd, and Chaplin, and we toured the country with it.
And based on the Kerr book, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I've used that as a textbook.
Right, and as a result, I noticed, especially since we were in one city, like say San Francisco, for 3 weeks, you begin to see some of the same young people in there, and then they would bring their friends, and ultimately, well, for example, in New York, I've just finished a 10-week series of films at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. It's a great big pipe organ, and by the time the series was over, about 90% of the audience was young people, which was very interesting.
That is a pleasant surprise to hear. You're not planning on retiring anytime soon, are you?
By no means.
So we can expect to see you back in Kansas City several times in the foreseeable future.
Well, I hope so.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Erwin. Glad to have met you, glad to have heard you. And now back to KCCP TV. There you have it. We have one more little interview piece to show. Let's face it, folks. People of my generation have grown up with worldwide communications that have been improving and improving and improving by leaps and bounds. But people that are just a little bit older than me remember what it was to have, for the first time, clear radio reception, good programming, and what have you. And one of our staff members on Entertainment Spectrum, Hewlin Oliver, who spends 90% of his time behind the camera, elected to come out in front of the camera and talk about the Moon River show that Lee Erwin was associated with. So let's hear what Hewlin Oliver has to say. Well, we're having a slight difficulty. Hewlin usually does the post-production on our videotape, but he was there at the show providing some support and equipment, and he enjoyed the concert, as you'll see. Lobby of the Granada with Hewlin Oliver, who's a member of our Entertainment Spectrum staff. He's usually behind the camera, but from his personal collection he provided the microphone that was on the organ tonight, reminiscent of the time 50 years ago when Moon River was actually a going entity. And Hewlin, you told us that you used to listen to Moon River.
You betcha. Every night at 11 our time here, 11:05, I'd turn my radio to hear the organ and the beautiful poetry. And this microphone dates back to about the early 1930s, at the time the show was on. It was a big thrill to me to meet and see Lee Erwin in person. He was the organist for that famous show long, long ago on WLW in Cincinnati.
I guess an awful lot of people tuned into that thing, since they said it was 500,000 watts, if you can believe that in this day and age. That must have blown out receivers within a few miles of the transmitter.
They had to fix the special things on the lights to keep them from coming on. And the telephones would ring, and quite an activity in Cincinnati when he put this powerful transmitter to work.
Well, thank you, Hewlin, and we'll be seeing more from Hewlin behind the camera in post-production and in front of the camera from time to time here on Entertainment Spectrum. Now, to change the topic completely, like I said, we had a great time with Mr. Erwin, but today, as we tape, the Granada Theater announced that it will be screening Martin Scorsese's controversial The Last Temptation of Christ. It should be screening at the Granada Theater at the same time you're watching this on Friday night, folks. At least we hope so. So, Bob Maes, what prompted you all to book The Last Temptation of Christ with as much controversy as swirls around it?
Well, we've never been one to turn our backs on controversy. The contacts were made with Universal several months ago, or I should say back in August, early August, when the film was being released and all the controversy started. All the major movie chains here in Kansas City turned it down because they were afraid to, that. But we always have believed at the Granada that there is freedom of speech and that people should be allowed to see a movie and render their own decision on it. So when the major movie chains turned it down, we negotiated with Universal as the premier house in Kansas City to show the film. And being a movie house, and that's our business, is films and that, it was just a natural thing to fit it in. Now, we haven't been first run at the Granada Theater in over 25 years, so it's kind of a new thing for our theater to go back into full-scale operation, and we had a lot of gearing up to do to get ready for it.
Now, you told me earlier that you all, even before you seriously considered booking this thing, had received a lot of protest mail.
We have received thousands of protest letters and telephone calls, but they're not all protests. There was a lot of them have been for it. And surprisingly enough, about 50% of the calls coming in from the clergy are in favor of showing this picture, and they feel that it will bring people closer to their beliefs and that they should be allowed to make up their own decision.
Well, I know I've been editorializing here on the channel. I think I've scorched a couple of microphones because anybody who knows me very well knows that censorship is about the fastest way to set me off straight through the roof. You know, I go off like Roger Rabbit.
Exactly.
And so I'm glad to hear that you all have booked the thing. I have no idea how it's going to go in this market. As a matter of fact, you may have some surprises coming.
Yeah, we don't have any idea either, Erwin. The film has done a tremendous amount of business in every city that it's opened. The Granada is the only theater within a 200-mile radius that has the picture. So we look for a lot of incoming people into the community to view this picture. There's also been, on the other hand, a tremendous amount of protest with picketers and things like that. So I would assume that the opening week at the Granada is going to be rather hectic, and it may be difficult to get tickets, although I should say we'll be doing 4 shows a day on weekends and 3 a day during the week. And we will continue to operate under a heavy schedule until the audiences start tapering off, which would probably be after about 2 weeks.
So you plan to sell a lot of popcorn too, I imagine.
Well, the popcorn will be there, and it'll be fresh and hot, and we certainly hope that there is no problems. It's not our intention to offend anybody or to poke fun at anybody. It's our intention to present the film and let people make up their own mind. If they don't want to see it, please don't come to the theater, but for those that do want to see it, it is available now in Kansas City.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bob Maes. We will be back to the Granada Theater probably after The Last Temptation plays. Personally, I'm more interested in the silence and some of the other things that are going on because I don't happen to like Martin Scorsese, folks, and I make no secret about it. But if you think The Last Temptation of Christ is something you ought to see either because you don't believe in it or because you do believe in it, give Granada Theater a call about their show times and rates and so forth. Because finally, we're going to get a chance to make up our own minds in Kansas City and let the people who want to shut the place down or shut anybody down who wants to show the thing, well, sorry about that, Charlie, but this is the way America's supposed to operate, folks, not the way some people have been saying it.
I got one more thing, Erwin, pertaining kind of to The Last Temptation of Christ. For all those people tonight that saw this, we will be using the theater pipe organ nightly between shows, which is an absolute first in the United States, probably in over 50 years. So if they do want to hear the organ, it will be there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm glad we got that in. We're out of time, folks. Good night for Entertainment Spectrum.